I'm going to move on to our next presenter. We're moving now from, we had Australia earlier in the day, and now we're going towards America. And our next presenter comes from New York, the Rochester Institute of Technology. So I'm delighted to introduce Laurie Ackles. She's director of the Spectrum Support Program, which provides specialist support for over 100 autistic students at the university. And she's going to talk just about that. Laurie, thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, very good.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about what we're doing at RIT at the Rochester Institute of Technology in upstate New York in the United States. But I thought it would also be good to talk a little bit about what really is going on in the United States. It's helpful to hear what a specific university is doing, but I also think it's helpful to get a sense of the bigger picture, since what works at one university doesn't always work at other universities. So what I'm hoping to share with you is kind of a current landscape of specialized support programs for students with autism in the United States, and then some emerging practices around the transition in, the transition through, and the transition out to employment. So in terms of numbers in the US, research tells us that we have about 50,000 youth transitioning every year into adulthood. About 1.85% of the population, according to the Centers for Disease Control, are autistic. So about 5 million adults with autism in the United States. And Drexel University does a National Autism Indicator report, which showed us that only about 39% of autistic youth had graduated or were on track to graduate with a post-secondary credential 7 years after high school graduation. And then we know that our employment numbers for disabled people are much, much lower than they should be. This isn't autism only, this is disabled employment, but we need to do a better job with preparing people for employment and working with our employers to make sure that they have provided ways for people to get into employment. So in terms of looking at US programs and what's going on in the United States. So this is some research by Brad Cox, who was out of the University of Florida. He looked at 65 institutions across the United States who have what we call specialized support programs. And you can see that we have about probably 80 or so that we know of, but this is about 65 of the programs that were involved in giving this information. So you can see that a bulk of the universities in the United States are public universities that are providing these specialized support programs specific to students on the autism spectrum. They're primarily universities, which is four-year universities versus community colleges. This shows us kind of what is it that the universities or the programs are requiring from students to be able to provide them with specialized services. And many of them require an autism diagnosis, which we've heard already, and we all know that can be an issue, not just diagnosis-wise, but also disclosure-wise. Many require registration with disability services. Some require an interview. At RIT, we've just started requiring an application and a special interview. We do not require a specific diagnosis or registration. And about 36% are listed as other. What struck me in Lisa's presentation earlier is that in the United States, we don't have special admittance for people with disabilities. People have to come into the university and have their acceptance. They're accepted as otherwise qualified for the university. So I think that my guess is that close to 100% of the programs do require students to come into the university, be accepted into the university, just like everybody else, before they can use the support of the program. So that certainly is the way that it works at RIT, and my guess is at most other universities as well. You can see that most of the programs that are specific to students on the autism spectrum have just started most recently in the last 5 or 6 years. So they're new. They're new, and the numbers of students are fairly small. Increasing numbers of students on the autism spectrum in general in the United States, as it is everywhere. 1 in 59, 1 in 40, about that for males. We know that female diagnosis lags as well. And we also know that Autism Speak tells us that 44% of people on the autism spectrum have IQ scores in the average to above average range. So these are students who are coming onto our college campuses in increasing numbers. Here's the numbers from the 65 programs. Enrollment in these specialized programs. Current average is about 40 students that are being served by these programs. At RIT, we hit 40 students in year 3 of our program. So it's important to realize that these programs are serving students in different ways. Certainly serving a residential student who spends 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on campus compared to supporting a commuting student is going to look different. It also depends, how many students you're serving as to what your services might look like. But we also know that there is a disparity in disclosure, that for every college student with autism who has identified themselves to disability services, there are at least 1 or 2 who have not. At a place like RIT that draws a lot of STEM students, we know that we have many, many more students on the autism spectrum than have identified or are working with our program or who have identified through Disability Services Office. So this is what the program enrollment at RIT looks like, the Spectrum Support Program. We started back in 2008 with about 12 students. And you can see that we quickly ramped up the numbers, and they've continued to increase. Where the arrow is, you can see that we had a decrease in our enrollment. That's where we instituted the fee for the program. And so the first several years, we instituted the program without a fee. We had a large grant from the National Science Foundation that held us over for several years. But as the numbers increased, we found we needed to institute a fee in order to be able to serve the students. And so our enrollment dipped a little bit. I think what that really had most to do with is that these are students who were enrolling who really had a high need for the program, rather than those who were maybe it's a nice to have when there isn't a fee involved. So again, the fee did not impact our enrollment. And the other important thing to remember is that what works for 10 students, what we can do for 10 or 20 students, really no longer works when you're serving 30 or 50, or as we are now, over 100 students on the spectrum. So that's where the fees really start to come in, is that, it comes to a point where you need more staffing, you need more space. In the United States, families are accustomed to paying for college, quite a bit for college. They're also accustomed to paying for support services throughout their students' lives, whether it's tutoring or mental health services. Families are accustomed to paying oftentimes out of their pocket. And so when you look at the tuition and fees for a university, and then you see the annual fees underneath in the brown box, shows you the annual fees for specialized supports, for those programs that charge. In this research, we did find that there are about a third of the programs don't charge any cost at all. They don't cost the family anything at all, which is wonderful. Again, what you can do for 10 or 20 or 30 students compared to trying to do that for 100 students. It eventually there comes a time when the university has to really increase their what they're dedicating to the program, or we have to families or gifts to be able to provide the support. So the average cost is around $3,000 a year. At RIT, our tuition is $50,000 a year. And so when you look at our fee for support being about $2,000 a semester, you know, when you're putting in $50,000 to pay tuition, and it's a couple $1,000s to have the supports that the student might need, families are pretty willing to pay for that, to get that extra support. You can see a high cost here, $18,180. My guess is that there's probably a residential component included. I don't think we're looking at apples. I think what we're looking at is apples and oranges here when you look at average cost and highest cost. So there's also a difference in the supervisory unit where these programs are housed. So some of them, many of them are housed under the Department of Psychology and Counseling Services, some in academic affairs, some in the education, disability, or accessibility services. The Spectrum Support Program is housed within the Division of Student Affairs. We purposely pulled it outside of any of these other types of units. RIT is the home of the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. And so we have sort of a culture of seeing the deaf community as a community, a cultural community. And so our hope was that that we would be able to see the autistic community in the same way. The other thing that's really important about where the programs sit is that the American with Disabilities Act is a civil rights law that that students use to get their accommodations. And by having a program sitting within accessibility services, it can really be confusing for families about how do you charge for these programs. These are services for students with disabilities, and how can you do that? And the fact really is that it's a personal service. It's an additional service on top of accommodations. Students who need academic accommodations get those through disability services. Our students at RIT who need counseling support or tutoring are getting all of those services through sort of mainstream services, as someone referred to it earlier. And what we hope to do through the Spectrum Support Program is just to fill some of those gaps in for students for things that don't currently exist. These are some of the supports that programs in the United States are offering. You see life skills, you know, people call those different things. It's really, you know, it's independent skills. For us, it's a lot of problem solving and strategizing around navigating the college experience. For us, that's most often done through mentoring and coaching. What you don't see here is career preparation, which is really, in my eyes, kind of an issue in itself, that we didn't look at, that this research didn't look at what universities are doing to prepare students for employment. At RIT, we are a co-op school, and so our students are required, about 85% of our programs require at least one semester of paid internship experience in order to earn your degree. And so that's something that's really, really important to make sure that we're including right from the beginning. So Laurie Ackles, I think is how you say it, in the book Uniquely Human, talks about the opposite of anxiety isn't calm, it's trust. And he explains why those on the spectrum often sort of react with fear and look for ways to really maintain structure and routine and control in their daily lives. And it really has to do, what he says, is with a disability of trust in having trust in your own body and brain, that you're in control of your thoughts and that you can keep things organized and that kind of thing. Trust in the world around us, in the way the world works, and understanding that things are, inconsistent and that change is difficult, and really trust in others. People who have not always been reliable or kind, and having a lot of trouble sometimes reading the intentions of other people sort of brings up that mistrust. And so one of the things that I think is really important when we're looking at enhanced or specialized services on campus for students who identify as neurodiverse or who identify in the autism spectrum is sort of these three big things. It's really building relationships with students. It's helping build community around students where they can feel connected to their peers and to the campus as a whole. And then the other thing is building capacity, something again that Mary Rose talked about, and I think Lisa as well, is building that capacity, that whole campus approach to our work. And so it's important that we are trustworthy, that we're generous with our time, that we're available to students, that we're curious about students, and that we get a deep understanding about who they are and what they need and what they want. And that we're compassionate, that we remember that students are doing the very best they can under the circumstances, and that we have a university that remains trustworthy and generous and available and curious and compassionate to all students, that we have that whole campus approach. So in terms of specialized supports for students, we do a lot with mentoring and coaching. That's our primary individualized, specialized, one-on-one service, is working with students and pairing them with a mentor or a coach. Especially important as they are coming into the university, where they may need some assistance with building new routines, with understanding kind of what their new routine is going to look like. Making sure that students can access resources, that they know how to access the resources that are available on campus. As I said, our goal in the Spectrum Support Program is not to provide all the services that students need. It's to help them make use of the university, of all that the university has to offer. And so that's not just letting them know there is a counseling center, but introducing them to the counselors, walking them over, making sure that they understand what that is going to look like. We do a lot of planning and prioritizing and strategizing and problem solving with students around academic concerns or social issues, or in getting ready for the transition to career. Helping students really understand the unwritten rules and expectations, how things work in the dorms. Why is it that it's okay for one person to go into somebody's room, but without knocking. But when I do that, you know, people get angry at me. So helping them really understand some of the expectations that are different on a college campus, and classroom expectations, which are different from high school to college. Students on the spectrum are subject to the same code of conduct at RIT as every other student. So it's important that they have a really strong understanding of the unwritten rules and expectations that exist in our communities. Helping them to manage the processes, which are so complex, with, you know, using their academic accommodations, finding the courses that they need to register for next semester, managing the whole housing selection process and finding roommates. All of those really complex processes that are difficult for all college students. And so we do some work around that. Making sure that students have the time and the space to process what's going on with them. So talking through situations that are challenging, helping them identify some options and some solutions, and then providing some feedback. So those are all things that can be done really well in mentoring and coaching kind of relationship. And again, having somebody that they know that is there, that understands who they are, that cares about their success, and is there to support them through all the challenges that college brings to all students. The other thing that's really important is transitional support. So students are coming onto the college campus, again, from high schools of all different shapes and sizes. And when they can get a preview of what the university experience is going to look like, they can move into their housing before other students. They can pick the place where the bed is, or move things around in the room. Get an idea of the dining that's available, and how do I manage the lines in the dining halls? Where is going to be the most comfortable place for me to be eating? Get a feel for the campus layout. We walk through, we have an older student walk through their course schedule with them across the campus, from building to building and classroom to classroom, so that they can get an idea of what does that classroom look like? Where am I entering? You know, is it the back of the room? Is it the front of the room? Is it a large class, a small class? Where might I be most comfortable sitting when I get in there? Introducing them to the stress-free zones on campus and the study spots on campus, and giving them a better idea of what these orientation activities are going to look like. When can they pull out of those orientation activities? Where are the places that they can go for quiet? Introducing them to the resources like Counseling Center, the Academic Success Center, the tutoring spots, how to use their accommodations, and then introducing them to their coaches through the Spectrum Support Program and the staff that are there to support them. What does the meeting space look like? Things like that. In terms of job search and moving out of university and into the work world, it's a complex process. You can see here on the screen. We tell students they will typically need to apply to 70 to 100 jobs. And starting about a year before, minimally 6 to 9 months before they're ready to get their experience underway. So, you know, they need to do the research on companies and potential co-ops. They've got to write their resume and their cover letters. There's some networking that has to happen in order to connect them to potential employers. There's a lot of organization and planning and keeping track, and then moving through an interview process and following up with employers. And then they get the no's. And so, you know, there's a necessity to try that again and again and again. And so it's a pretty overwhelming process for students. At RIT, we start it very early. Our students go out on co-op after the summer after their second year, most students are needing to go out on co-op. And so we're providing career support for students pretty early on, helping them understand what their strengths are. A lot of times students who have not had work experience, which a lot of our students coming into university have never had a job, they don't know how to talk about their strengths without bragging. So we need to work them through things like that. Talking about what their ideal work environment would be, and trying those out in campus employment. Is it the busy coffee shop, or would I be better off, working in the back? What's going to work best for me? Helping students really think about what their dream job is, but the realities of a first job and where we start. Decoding interview questions. What does it mean when they say, tell me about yourself? Helping them figure out when and how to follow up. What does a cover letter look like? When do I say thank you? When can I reach out and ask whether they're still, looking at my resume or not? Networking is really challenging. We have a couple of employers that we work with who offer job shadows. It gives students an opportunity to see what a professional work experience is going to look like. Mock interviewing is really important as well. Making sure that students know what the job search resources are on campus, helping them make disclosure decisions. Will they disclose? If so, when will they do that? How will they do that? And what accommodations might they want to ask for? Are there some things that they can accommodate on their own? What might that look like? So our career programming for students is a lot about helping them build the confidence. And it's about giving them a lot of time to practice, interview practice, networking practice, their 60-second commercial, how do they introduce themselves? That kind of thing. Providing very clear and concrete feedback so that students know what they're doing well and know where they need to continue to practice. Because although we're helping students work, come into sometimes some specialized employment programs through Autism at Work and neurodiverse hiring initiatives and things like that, many of our students will, for a very long time, probably have to go through the interview process just like everybody else. And so we want to work with them to be sure that they've got those skills to go through an interview process, which is not kind to most people, and certainly often not kind to students who think differently. So helping them plan and prioritize and make sure that they have a good system down for their job search process is really important. We have a Career Ready boot camp that we offer. We started this past 3 years ago with our Career Ready boot camp, and I'd like to show you this. This is my last slide, so it's a 2-minute video. Let's see if this works.
I've had these opportunities to really discover myself and discover my passions.
I've been feeling more confident in myself. It's a great way to refine your skills and have fun doing it.
Career Ready Boot Camp is a 3-week on-campus residency program for rising second years here at RIT. They all identify as being on the autism spectrum. What we do is we focus on the soft skills that employers have identified as being essential to success in the workplace. We also have the students apply these soft skills as they're working as a team to build the 3D printers. We have weekly performance reviews for the team and for the individual, and we also have networking opportunities so that they can practice all the skills necessary to succeed.
This is an opportunity for students to take advantage of something they're not going to get anywhere else. There are no other colleges that are doing what RIT is doing.
Being able to interact with people professionally and successfully is something that I value a lot. One of the main reasons why I came here is so that I could gain those skills that I need to not be a nervous wreck while I'm doing my job.
We're really working to expand the employment opportunities for students on the autism spectrum and those who think differently and who really interact with the world differently.
We have employers that are coming here from across the country in order to gain access to our talent. I'm excited to be here at the Career Ready Bootcamp at RIT because I want to be a part of the student's journey and give them insights into what it's like to go through the resume process and interviewing process to better prepare them for when they're ready to take that next step.
I think this bootcamp really tries to push you out of your comfort zone and make it so then you can express your ideas, your thoughts, and your viewpoints to others. I would suggest joining this bootcamp because you need the soft skills to go anywhere in the workplace. You need to interact with other people.
I do view this as building a foundation. Having the introductory soft skills to build upon in the future is definitely very valuable.
And I think I finished right on time. So there's my email if you have questions. And I think that's it.